Good evening and welcome to the Mayor's Report. I'm Kayla Mamelak, a reporter for Somerville Neighborhood News. Joined with me today is Mayor Joseph A. Curtatone. Mayor Curtatone, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here, Kayla.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let's dive right into it.
Okay.
I'd like to start with a quote from the Globe. It was actually on an article in relevance to Somerville, and here's what it says. It says, "For a town to grab the it factor, public transportation is a must." So we know that Assembly Square has the orange line, and now we have Union Square. So I'd like to talk about Union Square and how the green line is coming over there. And is that something you're going for in the upcoming year? Is that a goal, to have Somerville have this it factor and be this new trendy place that people are calling it now?
I already think we have the it factor, but I agree that public transit is critical. If we think about the future of mobility in cities, it's important to understand that this is where populations are shifting to, where you have active, engaged, healthy lifestyle communities where you have more opportunity to bike, to walk, to drive a car, or good public transit. And one of our goals as a community, one of our values, to shift future trips by 50% to more biking, walking, and public transit. And the transit's the capstone for so many things, so for a more healthy lifestyle, to connect people to jobs, healthcare, housing, academia, and to uncap economic potential. As you have alluded to, you've seen the result of what happened and what is going on in Assembly Square with the Orange Line station.
Sure. What are Somerville residents going to be seeing in the upcoming year in terms of the redevelopment at Union Square?
Well, we have a community-based planning process that's kicking off today, on the 17th, as a matter of fact, which is Somerville by Design process, which it's been a best practice, alluded to as a best practice, and we utilize in many different parts of the city, where the community, every member of the community, has a voice, engage with the city, with our private sector partner and all stakeholders to understand how do we want to see the square develop within the confines of the zoning, and what other changes have to be made to achieve what we want to achieve as a community. So it's going to be really exciting over the next year. We'll see those plans formalized over the next year. We should have a groundbreaking of the Green Line station at Union Square. We have more discussions around infrastructure changes needed to happen. And we already have a lot of economic activity, a lot of great places to dine, to visit, but also future plans for other parcels in the district. So a lot of changes coming.
So you mentioned that the community, the residents, are going to be involved. I'm not completely sure if this is correct, but I know there's a community benefits agreement going on in Somerville. And if I'm right, that means that the developers and the city is what's primarily involved. And I know there's been a bit of a movement to have residents get involved. Is that something you might be interested in doing?
Residents will be involved. We do not have a community benefits agreement negotiated or executed yet, because we still don't know what is going to be built. We still do not know what expectations we want to impose on the master development partner, and how that aligns with our community goals. So part of that planning process is to understand what we hope to achieve as a community. That'll help guide us over the next several months and year to understand, well, this is what we want to achieve as a community in the confines of a community benefits agreement. And there'll be a lot of public engagement on that. And you're right, when you have the community, the city, and the private sector aligned on a common goal, like we have in Assembly, like we've had in the Green Line, like we will have in Union Square, it is very powerful. There's really no stopping the community in achieving and chasing its hopes and dreams. So it'll be an important part of getting that done.
What are some things you'd like to see residents and the community get involved in specifically?
Well, we really need them engaged in everything we do in city life. And we have such a robust environment of community engagement, and that's what sets Somerville aside. I talk to my colleagues who have that fear factor. Well, nothing said, nothing heard, nothing wrong. I don't think we'd be as rich of a culture if we weren't as engaged. So I want to see residents come out and participate in every facet of the planning process, the visiting process, not just for Union Square, but for the whole city. We have a set of shared hopes and dreams called Summer Vision. That talks about who we want to be in the next 20 years when we grow up, and that is based on a set of community values brought forth by the community. So we need more of that engaged, cerebral participation from the community, because we become not only a richer place, but we will succeed where we want to go, in terms of where we want to go.
Sure. So I'd like to move a little bit to housing affordability, if you don't mind. Somerville's been developing this new, like we said, trendy and hipster type reputation. And people who have lived here for a while, which a lot of Somerville residents have, know that wasn't always the case. People used to joke and call it Slummerville, and thanks
Yeah, we're
to...
not allowed to repeat that, but go ahead.
And so my point is, there's been these great new advancements thanks to a lot of your hard work. The new biking path, I think I heard Somerville is the #1 most bikeable city in the state, if I'm not wrong.
In the Northeast.
In the Northeast. And, there's the walking paths, there's the Green Line coming, this new Park Mobile app, which we spoke about in a different show. And so are there anything that the residents can be seeing new, specifically to this city, that they can look forward to in the upcoming year?
So in terms of the affordability issue and the housing one, which you asked, I think this is one of the biggest crises facing the region from how we grow and how we develop. We are excited by the level of investment, which is unprecedented that we see in the city. And it's not by mistake. We've planned for this. We wanted to envision our future, plan for that future, and build that future. But we have to make sure we develop or implement policies and programs that allow everyone to participate in that if they choose to do so. So the rising tide of prosperity raises all boats. How we do that is going to have to involve a very in-depth conversation with the community in terms of program and policy changes and regulatory changes we may need to accomplish that. What we see is sort of this hipster community, what we see happening in Somerville, again, is consistent with what's happening across this country, which is the greatest demographic shift since mid-century, where now you have baby boomers, millennials like myself, and young hipsters like yourself. People are moving to cities, and by 2050, 3/4 of the world's population will live in cities. That's powerful. So the cities and regions that plan for that future, the cities and regions that build for those future needs are the ones that will be successful, and that's what we're trying to do in Somerville. So we're trying to understand, based on our summer vision goals, how we develop the city smartly, create that multimodal capacity so people can bike, walk, use their automobile smartly, or take public transit. Policies around public health, around open space and housing. One of our goals is to create, originally it was 6,000 additional units of housing, of which more than 1,200 would be permanently affordable. We're ready to and poised to bump that high, but the region as a whole needs 435,000 units of housing by 2040. If this region wants to remain viable, keeping young, talented professionals like yourself here, allowing families to grow here, allowing those who've been here all their lives to age in place, which really adds to the richness of any city or region, we need to think about that and for the long term.
Right. So that being said, my question is, there are been a lot of residential buildings in the works. They're in the process of being built. There have plans to being built in the upcoming year. I know there is housing affordability offered in a lot of these houses, but it's my understanding that these units are in the minority. So we have a large group of, wealthier people that can pay a higher rent coming in and buying these apartments, which is great. But how do you plan to maintain the original Somerville residents and keep them here and have them continue to afford?
Well, what we have, I would say a lot of people have that opportunity here. What we have found is that while we have really modeled efforts and how we address the lower end of the affordability scale. So what you and I and others may think affordability is and how that is defined for legal purposes of qualifying to participate in those affordable housing programs are two different things. But the Boston region is one of the most gentrifying regions in the country. The Boston, and a lot of people are income stressed here in terms of a greater proportion of their income is used towards housing costs than most of the country. In some cases, a lot of people, over 50%. And so there are a lot of people who want to come to Somerville now because the schools are stronger, and they're growing and doing very well. The community is a great place to live, work, place, raise a family. But we have a shortage of housing stock, not just in Somerville, in the region. And what's really driving the demand piece up is the shortage of stock. But you're qualifying, how do you qualify to participate in a very tight, thriving real estate market to purchase or rent that housing stock is a problem, especially for middle income families. I mean, it runs across the board, but what we see being squeezed out, and based on our analysis, is those people who fall in the middle. So, you have formulas based on the average median income on a percentage lower than that. So those at the middle to low and lower end of the AMI scale, there are a lot of programs that they may qualify for. Those at the middle who have a child and maybe living in a 1-bedroom condo or 2-bedroom, want to get to a 3-bedroom more, there's very little stock there because the market is incentivizing the development of a different type of stock. So, and also is incentivizing higher end units, which is subsidize the lower end, and the middle is being squeezed out. So one of the things over the next coming year, we're going to be looking at and examining as part of our Sustainable Neighborhood Initiative, and we asked the public to be involved. We put out a call for members of the public to involve in this conversation is where can we, on a legal or policy construction standpoint, make changes there? Where do we have to go to the state to allow for more people to participate in those programs? Again, there's not going to be a silver bullet in this. Somerville alone can't build a firewall around the city and saying, this will be the most affordable city in the Commonwealth and the region, and nothing else will affect us. So although we'll take painstaking and diligent efforts to make sure we set a model for that, part of the conversation I'm having with regional leaders, it has to be a regional approach to have true impact.
Sure. What are some of the specifics that residents have come and said to you in these types of meetings, specific things that they'd like to see?
We've heard, the same thing, I don't qualify for the typical programs. They're really good. They have an impact, but we're being squeezed out. We make too much to qualify for that. We don't make enough to participate in a very vibrant market. If you have a home for sale in Somerville, single-family home, you find a home for sale, I should say a single-family home, you need to be prepared to pay 20% over asking and be ready to move within a matter of hours. The city can't even move with that much flexibility and nimbleness. It's very difficult for average folks to do as well. So it's a very highly speculative market because it's a hot market. People want to be here. So how do we participate in that market in a way that allows opportunity for the people who want to be here to stay here? So those are the things we're hearing. We can't keep up with that pace in this game. And there's not enough housing stock for us or programs for us to be involved. So it's going to be a very engaged, important discussion over the next year, and we need the community to participate in that. Mm-hmm. And we've been inviting them.
Great. And it sounds like a lot of these plans that you're describing are great and they will be effective, but it seems like these are more long-term, and correct me if I'm wrong, these are things that will take time.
Some will take longer than others. Some will be, I think it's multi-tiered and multi-layered. There'll be things we can do immediately that have some impact on the programmatic standpoint. Some may be legislative or regulatory changes that we are not allowed on the Massachusetts general law to just do unilaterally as one city. We would seek legislative relief at the state level. But if we act diligently and cooperatively as a community based on a set of values we've set out in Somervision, we'll get there. We'll have impact locally. But again, I can't stress enough that the region, which is starting to wake up, understands we're not the only one impacted, and people want to be in this region as well. We see, great articles recently about Chelsea and other communities, and I'm not surprised. People want to be part of this community. We're very compacted geographically. If you're from LA, what neighborhood in LA would we be? LA would expand much farther out than the small quarters of the Boston boundaries. If this was the New York metro area, we'd be Brooklyn. Many people would say, and we're just tight. We're separated in terms of our boundaries and our political boundaries and our governmental boundaries, but geographically we're very close and compacted and densely populated. So all the market forces impact all of us.
Mm-hmm. Let's move to Assembly Square for a second. This is a bit of a general question. Once Assembly Square stabilizes, do you predict that it will provide the commercial revenue the city is expecting to take in?
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. It's exceeding expectations at this point, and that's a great model of not only a public-private partnership, but a community, again, the developer, the city, our state and federal partners working hand in hand together and being diligent, playing the long game, not selling ourselves short. So we know it's going to meet the jobs numbers over time. Already more than 40% of the people working there, almost 50%, are Somerville residents, and the national average is really having about 30% of your local residents work in a particular development area. So it's going to create the jobs numbers. It's going to create the local property tax-based revenue, net new revenue of almost $20 million per year at full build-out. And that's just half the entire Assembly Square district. People need to realize that the Assembly Road project embodies a little over 70 acres, or about 70 acres. The district is about 146. So now we want to begin a discussion to master plan and set the narrative and script for the remaining parcels for the future, so people know our community expectations. So it will meet the jobs numbers and the revenue numbers, and it's already having an impact on our on our tax rate and our operations budget.
Sure. In regards to the tax rate, there's been a new announcement that partners will be moving towards Assembly Square. Now, I know that it's giving, 4,000 jobs to people.
They bring in 4,750 jobs, and in Partners' case, most of those jobs will be moved here, but they are working with the city in terms of providing job opportunities as they become vacant. But the important thing is that's an entire universe of people coming here every day. In the daytime population, which we really need to boost out, shopping at the stores, eating in the restaurants, contributing to our local tax base.
Sure. So I guess that kind of answers my question, but I would like a little more elaboration. Is Partners is a nonprofit organization, and nonprofits don't pay a commercial tax. So they pay what kind of tax is it? A property tax. They don't pay a property tax,
Right.
Excuse me. So what was the decision to bring Partners and not necessarily a bigger business as Somerville becomes more in demand? Can we become more choosy with who we bring in and, promote towards the city getting more better taxes brought in? What was the decision?
Let me just say, in terms of Partners, probably the most, if not one of the most important employees in the Commonwealth. One of the things we showed with Partners coming to Somerville, and mind you, before Partners, it was going to be IKEA, and they were noble and honest brokers with the city. It would have been good if they came. It's better that they didn't. We're allowed to more densely develop those parcels and bring more jobs. And with Partners, even though you're right, they're a nonprofit, and they executed a community benefits agreement, what they're paying in lieu of taxes will be more than what IKEA would have paid in taxes, and more jobs. So there's a greater economic benefit. So we need to measure it apples to apples. And the important of having Partners is we had to fight against the perception in Assembly Square and Somerville, it's not an office market. It's not an office market. And we would respond, you're right, it's not an office market until it is. And guess what? It is. It is. And when you bring one of the most important employees that is connected to research bases and hospitals in the inner core, that's huge. Because now we see it's providing synergy and opportunity for other businesses to come here. We just announced that SmartBear, a software technology company, will be coming and moving into Somerville next month at the office building that was built at Assembly Row. You can rest assured that Partners leading the way is opening up the eyes and doors for many people to come here. So is an incredible positive economic benefit. And we are being choosy about who we bring here, and we want Partners here. Because one of the things we want to explore is there a research opportunity, research element, dry research with Partners coming here? Because that's the type of industry of the future we want to be working with, not just in Assembly, but across the city.
Sure. Recently, we elected Governor Charlie Baker. And I know you had a pretty good relationship with Governor Deval Patrick. Are there any plans? Have you spoken with Governor Baker yet? Are there any plans for you to work directly with him?
Absolutely. I've spoken to Governor-elect Baker before the election, and I'll be speaking to him again. And I think he's made some pretty good appointments. My colleague from Chelsea, Jay Ash, is the new Secretary of Economic Development and Housing, for instance. I think he's fantastic. Charlie Baker's a smart person. Party ideology aside, he wants to get things done. And I think he understands and should understand the need to partner with cities and towns across the Commonwealth, whether they voted for him or not. And we are the fuel that feeds the economic engine of the Commonwealth. And he's been quick to point out Somerville across the campaign trail as a model of management and planning and investment, and how city should run and grow. And I expect we'll have a good, constructive relationship. I certainly offered that, and he has too. And we have a responsibility to work together, regardless of our party differentiation, to get things done for the common good. I think Charlie, Governor-elect Baker, understands that. I certainly do, and I'm not going to let party differences hold that back. Plan to work with his administration closely.
Are there any specific programs that you've voiced to him in regards to the city of Somerville?
Green line, green line, green line. And more, there are a whole bunch of other programs and he's asked my opinion on. I'm as the chair of the Metropolitan Mayors Coalition, which is a coalition of the 13 mayors and CEO, myself in Boston, ourselves in Boston included. I'll be working with the legislature, have been for years, and with past governors and with Governor-elect Baker. But for Somerville's interest, I made it loud and clear. Look, we want to keep our success moving forward. Here's how we have been successful working with governors and our federal partners. And the green line is really important. And with the news on the Green Line. More positive news, I think he understands that fully.
Sure. Let's talk about the opioid addiction problem in Somerville. I know that this was a big issue in the media earlier in the year, and it's kind of faded a bit, even though it really is an issue that still remains in Somerville. Are there anything specifically in the upcoming year or any city programs you plan to work with in order to fix this problem, and what will those be?
Well, this is another important issue in terms of my conversations with Governor-elect Baker. He has flagged this as an important issue for him because it's not just a Somerville crisis or Massachusetts crisis, it's a national crisis. Somerville has been a leader in the preventive field and the prevention field, and has communities worked on community-based initiatives for intervention and education. This particular epidemic has been real troubling because it shows no sign of slowing, and it's impacting everyone. And you know, Governor-elect Baker and I and others have talked about this greatly in terms of the city, you know, working with Somerville Cares About Prevention, our health department, and our community partners from teen empowerment, others, and our other social service agencies. We're working together to understand how we recognize our collective responsibility. This is a community problem. It warrants a community response, so we want to continue to educate our community to provide love, care, and support and response for those in need, for those who are suffering, from those who have survived, for those who have lost someone they love and care. We're all involved in that. I know so many people that I know personally, and it does not discriminate who it's going to impact. And from how we think about strategic interventions, one of the things we know right away we can do in terms of better communicating, getting support as a Commonwealth community, as a state, is dealing with some of the, you know, part of the drug industry too, and the medical industry, and how quickly they are to prescribe certain opiates as medication, and how those lead to as a gateway to heroin as well. And in addition to our fight for the prevalence of heroin across this nation. You know, these stories are too sad. There's actually been stories in the paper yesterday. You know, we see what's going on in Vermont and other states. You see this discussion at the national level. But we have to understand that as a society, we have a responsibility to invest in the programs and prevention measures that will lead to this not happening. We can't just be in the business of just having to distribute or you know, impose Narcan measures on people to save them at the end. There's a lot that has to be done at the beginning. So there are a lot of things we can do as a society. I think some of us will be glad to and proud to show the way how we as a community respond to this, but it's the greater community that has to be involved in this, and we'll be very active with the governor and other parts of the region on this issue.
Sure. Are there any city programs in particular you plan to work with?
Well, we have the Somerville Cares About Prevention, our health department, and the work that the Trauma Response Network does in educating the community, working with our stakeholders across the community in the region, working in our schools and in every neighborhood. But you know, we're going to continue our efforts there and continue our investments there, but we need some relief. Every city does, the entire state does, in terms of, again, how people find a gateway into heroin use. You know, what are the levers in this greater environment that we can manipulate to understand how we can deter the prevalence of heroin in our cities and towns? And who is it affecting? What is going on in their lives that leads them down this path? These are the questions we ask every day. So that is one of the other, I said the housing, this is probably at the top of the list in terms of crisis.
Sure. What is the health department doing in specifics in regards to opioid addiction?
Well, the health department, Somerville Cares About Prevention is out of our health department. We're doing everything to educate, to communicate, to give support to families, to those in recovery, to work with our social service agency partners, to work with neighboring cities and towns in the Commonwealth on a very comprehensive approach to dealing with the epidemic.
Great. I'd like to turn to your new campaign proposal. You recently vetoed an alderman. I believe that was your first veto.
I haven't vetoed that. It's probably got a lot of more notoriety. But a couple others, smaller scale stuff.
Well, you're one of your few vetoes, and in regards to campaign proposal, and you recently released a new campaign proposal. Can you talk about what your new campaign proposal says?
So, yep.
And
so
why
what we
you
vetoed,
vetoed
why we vetoed the first one, it was a campaign finance reform proposal, which I support. imposed on contributions of certain people, categories of individuals or groups of people who are either developers or have a proposed development proposal or certain city contracts. And it's an effort, in which I agree with, to gain greater confidence of the general public and how we do business. We always want to be as transparent and as accountable as possible, and I agree we shouldn't wait for something that happens to reform. If we can be a leader in that, we should, and we want to be a leader. I vetoed the original proposal because, one, I didn't think it went far enough in holding ourselves as elected officials collectively responsible and not just putting the burden on one individual group. I also did not agree in bringing this issue into the actual decision-making process on the planning board and zoning board, which I think over-politicizes and opens up a very dangerous can of worms. And also, at the time, we really didn't have a proposal to build the administrative capacity for oversight to make sure we're doing and executing correctly on the legislation. So I vetoed it. I engaged my partners in the Alderman, my colleagues in the Alderman, and understood the comments they made. A lot of them for their important work, and that work led to the new legislative proposal, which again goes farther, puts the burden on all of us, on elected officials as well, not just the private sector or the public or the general development community, to report. And when someone is given a certain contribution limit over what is stated, again, the law limits the amount you can contribute. $250 within per calendar year for anyone who's had something proposed for development or certain contracts in the past year, and then a year moving forward. So I think the legislation I put forward builds upon the good work before and goes a little further and addresses the concern I had as an important policymaker in the city.
Great. And lastly, can you tell us a little bit about what education reform will be taking place in the upcoming year?
So on the schools, we're excited about the schools because, we've recently been called the best urban high school, the best urban school district in the state. We want to be the best school district. We're excited by our performance on MCAS and our student growth percentile. That's how fast our students are learning compared to their peers across the state. And Somerville is on an incredible trajectory. The schools are one of the reasons people want to be in the city. And as you know, the perception of the strengths and weaknesses of your school district is going to play an important role in how people vote. And they vote with their feet. Are they going to stay? Are they going to pack up and go? And we want them to stay. So over the next coming year, we're going to build on all the great work that has happened in the schools, our work on readiness to enter schools and in reading, our early childhood readiness program, work to continue the fantastic job at Somerville High School to expand the enrichment and curriculum, enrichment programs and curriculum across the district. And we're also excited because we just went through an incredible community-based effort to find a new superintendent. As you know, the current superintendent, Tony Parentazi, this is his last year. He's going to be retiring. And he's done a fantastic job in a decade here. And there's a great platform for the next superintendent to come in and build upon and really take us to that Excel level. And we've named Ms. Mary Skipper from the Boston Public Schools, who's in charge of 34 high schools and was the former head of the Boston Tech Academy, which was lauded by President Obama and Secretary Duncan for their work, who's going to come over September of 2015, actually in the summer of 15, to be the new superintendent. We're really excited. Not only is she the first woman superintendent, but she's an incredible talent. So we're excited by that transition and the goals we're going to set to push the bar even higher. And I'll tell you, as the parent of 4 young boys, my wife and I are parents of 4 young boys in the school, they're getting a great education, but the future is so exciting.
Great. I think that's a great note to end, don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Mayor Curtatone, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me.
That's our show. Again, my name is Kayla Mamelak. I'm with Somerville Neighborhood News, and thank you for joining us.